The focus now is really the celebrity brands because they realized they could take a bigger percentage of that. There was a day and age where celebrities used to only do any kind of branding if it was like a watch brand overseas in Japan. They didn't want to be seen as like marketers and sellers. And then there was a moment where everybody got over that. So when I went to UTA, it really was to launch their first investment fund. And that was to just be involved with all of the creative technologies that were somehow touching the entertainment industry. Okay. So the evolution of really just helping brands think about a good product and growing that business was, quite honestly, was one of the reasons why I felt like I was no longer aligned with that role. I don't have anything against helping build a celebrity brand or potentially making an investment there.
Right.
But it's certainly not going to be like the dominant part of my job.
All right. Thanks for joining me. Welcome. Tech Scenes Unplugged.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me about FounderForward.
So FounderForward is coaching, content, and community aimed at helping founders, executives, their teams, and businesses thrive. The short way to say it is we work with some of the best teams and leaders to make them even better. We work with companies of all sizes across all industries like healthcare, fintech, consumer packaged goods. I would say the commonality is that they're all high growth.
Okay.
And we work with companies anywhere and everywhere, including like Uruguay, Austin, New York, but having a base in LA, this is predominantly where our clients are.
Right.
So some of the LA companies that people might know the names of would be like Ritual, Tala, STEM. Courtney Cox has a new home beauty line that's amazing, Home Court, and we're working with them. Been doing it 8 years now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And what are your kind of like focus areas within that? Who are the types of people? Founders, CEOs, leadership team members? Is that right?
Yep. Founders, CEO, leadership team members. I will say that in doing that work, I realized that a lot of companies did not have a base level management training. Right. So while I don't necessarily go out and pitch myself as a management trainer, we did build a 3-part, really great, let's just get the basics of management down, which actually a lot of CEOs and leaders don't have.
Right.
So I find myself coaching with some of that. And then we developed a program for the managers. But I really love producing content, and really I just pay attention to where I think the needs are and what I'm hearing from my clients, and then kind of create some workshops and trainings around those topics.
So on that management front, what's that kind of look like? What are those topics?
So the sort of 101 is a lot of you're going to do the work first,
right,
so that you can understand this about the people you're managing. And then it also goes into things like, what does it mean to coach? Right? So a lot of people will use that word now. And it is, according to a well-funded study that Google did for us, the number one sort of skill of a manager is coaching, but nobody's ever been trained on exactly what that looks like, right? So we go through, there's a coaching model called the GROW model, which is not something we created. It's something that the Center for Leadership created, and it's sort of, a lot of the coaching modalities are sort of built off their own IP around this approach. And so many people haven't been taught that. So we do the GROW coaching model. We do some stuff on delegating, which is not really just the what of delegating, but sort of the why it's so hard for you. So then there's the internal work of, you know, what that need for control is, and often sort of uncovering the stressors or the fears around why it's so hard for you to delegate. Some of the stuff in the first module. The second module then goes into communications.
Okay.
Right? And so most people have not been trained properly on feedback. You know, best case scenario, they were given the horrible feedback sandwich framework.
Right.
But, you know, my big belief is we spend all of this money on teaching people how to give feedback. And you can do that all day, but unless you work with people on how to receive feedback, which once again gets more into their emotional triggers, defensiveness, right, psychological fragility, and all of these things, then it doesn't matter how good you get at giving it as an organization, it's not going to land well.
Right.
So we do a lot of the receiving work first, and then go into, you know, here's a framework for showing up and giving good feedback. And then the last one is just all on conflict. So in a high growth company, and you probably see this in all of your companies,
right.
I mean, conflict is necessary in the startup environment, right? If we didn't have conflict or a high growth environment, then the thing would be solved for,
Right.
right? So it's a hotbed of conflict inherently, but there is a big difference between what is toxic or unhealthy conflict and what is productive conflict. And that's what most people don't know.
Right.
Right. And so talking with people about what active listening is, and talking with people about what, you know, validating and acknowledging emotions look like, and what kinds of questions welcome, you know, conversation and collaboration and sort of healthy challenge is the third bucket.
Yeah.
So it's really, you know, a starter pack.
Right.
But it's really, I think, important. And what I see is most companies that go from B, C, D, they just skip a baseline. Yes. And then what happens is they break at the middle level. They break at the manager level.
Yep. No, I think that's so right. I think you really nailed those topics. The behaviors that I see in high growth companies that help them be successful is symbiosis, communication, alignment, learning, and empowerment. And from all the things that you just talked about, those are all the pieces that you need to understand to be able to do in order to like enhance those behaviors.
Yeah.
It's really, I find people understand like those things are important, but where they struggle is like, how do we actually do that?
Right. Right. You and I had talked about something that I'm a big believer in, which gets to outside of the sort of the management training, but some of the team workshopping, which is, you know, you're helping people, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but you're helping people with, you know, goal setting. And it's more than that. And,
right.
You know, but where I come in is sort of, a lot of teams that have some underlying, what I call just elephants in the room, but nobody wants to talk about them.
Right.
Around, you know, hotbed topics, emotional topics, conflict, drama. And the tool or the framework that I use that I found really useful is something called the drama triangle.
Right.
Which we had talked about.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. You're right. Like in a lot of the teams, part of what I do is help them learn how to plan by defining their vision and one-year plan and OKRs and KPIs, and within a cadence, you know, every 90 days that they do this to keep alignment and focus. In those meetings, it's very clear to me where people are uncomfortable, and I am trying to help them uncover the things that prevent them from going higher and farther.
Right.
And it is the elephants in the room. It is the topics that people feel uncomfortable talking about. There are conflicts when founders, CEOs, other people on the team are uncomfortable bringing these topics up because they feel like they are going to create conflict and they'd rather avoid it. And so it is challenging for me in these sessions, and it's challenging for some of these people in the sessions where we are bringing up these things and they get uncomfortable. And there are triggering moments. So I do think it would be so helpful for these teams to have a baseline of understanding of what's happening and what's happening internally with them, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'd love for you to describe this framework.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it's for, which is, it was created by Dr. Stephen Cartman in the 60s. And the concept is just the idea that, you know, many of us particularly in high growth businesses, any kind of business, society in general. We're in the hustle culture. We're moving so quickly. We're not always present, and we're easily reactive. And so from the drama triangle, you're in a state where like things are happening to me, and it's all driven by the point of the triangle is a sort of victim orientation. And so it's very much, oftentimes I see in a company, the martyr, the overworked, nobody understands me, woe is me. And then you have the persecutor or the villain, right? So, that can be investors, or that can be a teammate usually that's not understanding, or they didn't get their work done and now this, that, and the other. And the other dynamic is the rescuer, the hero. So that's the person on the team that's like, don't worry, or the CEO comes in in fixer mode, I can fix this. Sometimes we're our own rescuer or hero, meaning our behavior. So many folks that are, have an addiction, including the addiction to work, is your own sort of rescuer hero that is helping you feel better in the moment. But no matter how we look at it, we can play each of the roles in the triangle, and or we can put other people in the roles opposite from where we are. But the idea is to create a better understanding in drama. Where are you on this triangle, and how do you show up? And so in and of itself, that is really valuable, right? Because what happens is we sort of stuck in a repeated pattern of being in this drama triangle. And so another gentleman, David Emerald, created something called the empowerment dynamic, and it's sort of the counter to the drama triangle. And basically, instead of being a victim orientation where things are happening to you and you're mostly in stress and fear, you're in a things are happening by me, and you're very outcome driven, and things are created from passion and purpose. And so from victim, you claim your power and go to creator mode, right? And from persecutor or villain, it's challenger, which means it's sort of the Kim Scott, like if you care personally, you can challenge directly. Like you're supportive, but you're tough.
So that's more like challenger to make something better. Like collaborator almost. In a way.
But really, since we think of the victim is the the villain, and the challenger, you can think of like the differences. When you're a villain, you've usually like judged somebody, right? Or you're hypercritical in a non-constructive way. And a challenger is like without judgment, you're really trying to like supportively push somebody forward. And so then the rescuer, or the hero, the opposite of that is the coach. So that's really where you're helping somebody empower themselves, and you're helping facilitate their growth by asking great open-ended questions. And so the concept, in some of the workshops I do, is we put an issue on the board, and we have everybody write how they might be showing up, victim, villain, hero, who else on the team are they putting into these different roles, right? And then getting a real understanding of that, and then flipping into the empowerment dynamic and saying, okay, if you were coming at this from a creator orientation, what can you commit to in terms of making shifts and showing up in a more empowering way? And then we, actually get into dialogue about it and discuss it and have people share. And it can be really powerful. I have teams I worked with years ago that are like one of the biggest shifts that this gave me, not just for our team at work, but in life, right? Like any relationship you have, any situation you're in, we can easily go to sort of this thing is happening to me, and this person's this, and I'm going to rescue myself this way, or I'm going to call this person that likes to jump in and help me and make me feel better, but then I sort of bypass growth. And basically shifting from that lens to an empowerment lens is really, what facilitates growth and collaboration and resilience. But that can happen just as much in all of your outside of work relationships as your inside of work, right? Like we may use it in the work lens, but this is what I love about coaching is, I'm technically helping leaders step into their highest and best. And
Yep.
that's not just inside a work context. That's,
Right.
as a
Right.
human.
Right. I like that because it actually gives you a tool to be present in the moment, that actually see what's happening.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people get lost in the moment and they don't see what's happening. And then that's where like these triggers are like festering, and then it just creates more tension and more issues because of the anxiety that maybe they're feeling or other things that are happening.
Yeah.
Putting a lens to it and putting roles to that, I think would really create like some more comfort in the situation, especially if you
Yes. Yes. But so then the team becomes familiar with these names and roles.
Right.
And certainly for like an executive level team, I've got a company that I did this for, and they use it in context, right? So like before some meetings that they know that, there's going to be a lot of disagreements and maybe people have different views on, they do a reset, right? Like, let's make sure that we're trying to come to the table from a creator mindset. And like, it's easy to kind of fall down the traps of the victim orientation, and they're comfortable now using the words and calling each other out, right? And if they
Right.
don't call each other out directly, which they can do in a healthy way, if again, you're being a healthy challenger, then at least some of them can say, hey, listen, I feel like we're hearing some of the victim roles, or I feel like maybe we're heroing this situation. And so they start to incorporate the verbiage.
Yep.
And that's, I think, really helpful, because it then is not just one thing they did in a workshop, right? It's a real framework that they can incorporate with their teams.
Mm-hmm. It's so important because what I see in with these sessions is getting people to open up, transparent. We need to do that in order to create alignment. And if we can't create alignment, we can't create focus. And like the focal point of like, what's our alignment like 3 years out, or what's success look like by the end of the year, or even like what's success in the next 90 days. We need to create alignment on that. We need to agree on that. And it's okay if some people disagree, as long as we all committed.
Right.
Right. And so you have to have an environment. And I think those tools are like super important for that. Now I want to back up a little bit in your history. We haven't talked about this much, but when you played a VC role, you were at the UTA.
Yes.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So my guess is that you were probably working with a lot of celebrity brands. Is that right for UTA? Is that kind of the focus?
So now the focus now is really the celebrity brands, because they realized they could take a bigger percentage of that. And there was an evolution, right? There was a day and age where celebrities used to only do any kind of branding if it was like a watch brand overseas in Japan, right? Like they didn't want to be seen as like marketers and sellers. And then there was a moment where everybody got over that, because a few celebrities leaned in and built businesses and were comfortable with it, and then everybody wanted to get involved. So when I went to UTA, it really was to launch their first investment fund. And that was to just be involved with all of the creative technologies that were somehow touching the entertainment industry.
Okay.
So the evolution of really just helping brands think about a good product and growing that business was one of the things they were leaning into, and quite honestly was one of the reasons why I, felt like I was no longer aligned with that role, because that's not something that I'm interested in, right? So I don't have anything against helping build a celebrity brand or potentially making an investment there.
Right.
But it's certainly not going to be like the dominant part of my job.
Well, I find it interesting, being in LA and doing what I do get connected to a lot of celebrity brands. And not only their brands, but celebrities are diversifying, like any person with wealth in different areas. And so they invest in different companies.
Yeah.
And I've had the experience to work with some of these teams and these companies. And you see it all the time. I mean, Kevin Hart just shut down all his vegetarian places, right? A little outside of his probably focus area, but something that he is passionate about. And it's important that they find the right people, but he's doing a million things. I think he probably has like 200 some people on Hart Productions.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I really right at the, 2013 to 2016, that was a time where we were just at the start of a lot of this. It was a really interesting time. UTA had reached out to me because I'd been a leader in sort of the tech startup ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And, up until that point, entertainment was sort of over in WeHo, and tech was, Silicon Beach, and I know everyone hates the term, as do I, but that's what we were calling it, because it really was sort of that way. And really, I was hired not just to run the fund, but to sort of be somebody that brings these two groups together, right? I used to run an airplane. I did a partnership with Delta, and we called it the Nerd Bird, and we took like everybody from LA Tech to South by Southwest. And at one point, like people were flying down, VCs were flying down from San Francisco. And that was the kind of thing that UTA just wanted to be in the mix and see the opportunity.
Right.
You know, people follow the money. So their business model basically was like, why are we putting, you know, $100K in a startup that may touch entertainment but doesn't directly impact us, when we can go to our clients and get 10% or something and try to build a business. You know, I could spend a different podcast talking about why maybe agency types aren't the best for business building, right? And how that model is or is not working depending on, you know, the celebrity and how it's set up. But that's a little bit about, you know, me leaving there. I mean, I had kind of at that point really done some soul searching to figure out that coaching was something that I really wanted to move into.
Right.
But there are highly successful celebrity brands, but you know, I think that if you really looked at the percentage that are sustainably successful versus the percentage in the last 5 years that all have tried it, right, you would probably see a different story. But you know, that is not dissimilar to startups in general, right?
For sure.
So only so many are going to make it.
Right. And I think for any company, celebrity brands, companies they invest in, tech companies, when you're doing something new that's never been done before, you're always going to have that risk. But that's the upside too, right? So that's the upside of why people get there and do it. Wanted to talk about something you had said to me before, and it kind of just stuck in my brain. Something like, I think it was healthy, happy founders create healthy, happy companies or something like that. Is that, did I say it right?
Yes, it seems, you know, trite.
Right.
It seems trite, and I gotta tell you, when people ask me, you know, particularly like in this day and age, you know, what I see in terms of like great cultures and great leadership, and I just think that, you know, I think leadership's an inside game. And I think that if you work on, you know, your health, your well-being, your wholeness, you are the mirror for the company you're building.
Right.
And that's the reflection. And so I find that, you know, many of the most successful companies have leaders at the helm that are doing a lot of inner work. You don't often hear about them while they're doing it. Sometimes you hear about it later. Steve Jobs was very big on mindfulness and meditation, got Mark Benioff into it. They're very focused at Salesforce on like mindfulness and wellness and well-being. John Mackey at Whole Foods. You know, I just listened to an amazing podcast, Rich Roll with John Mackey, and talking about like his approach to Whole Foods and his approach to sort of health and wellness, and you know, leading as a conscious leader and building that into their culture, which is sort of remained even with all of the Amazon changes. So yeah, I'm a big believer, and when I say it, people sometimes roll an eye, but I think it's true. Healthy, happy founders build healthy, happy companies.
Well, one of the things that I see a lot is a lot of the teams, a lot of founders I talk to every single day are struggling, and it's really hard. Like being a CEO of a venture-backed company, doing something that's never been done before, and being in the center. You're always going to be in the center if you're the CEO founder of this company. You can't let some operating models say, elevate and delegate and, you know, just be the visionary and everybody run. That's not the case in these companies. You're always going to be at the center until you're not. And your customers are your boss, your investors are your boss, your board members are your boss, your employees are your boss, everybody is. That's just the reality. And they're under such pressure. Sometimes it's hard for them to be present, be mindful, be happy, you know, enjoy the ride. Like everyone knows you're supposed to, but it's so hard for these founders.
It is so hard. So I guess I should clarify that when I make that statement, the presupposition is that you're doing the work, right?
Right.
Rarely is anybody healthy, happy all the time, right? Like if I go into some of my, you know, Eastern wisdom, you know, interests that I bring into coaching, right? Life is suffering. Okay, so the work is, are you doing the work to be as healthy as you can? Happy is a little bit of an interesting word, but what I mean is kind of positive mindset or optimism.
Right.
And I do have a lot of founders say to me, well, I just can't be happy all the time. I'm not going to just be positive all the time. The good things aren't happening.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm talking about pragmatic optimism. People feel your energy, right? You have a vision. Can you stay optimistic towards the long vision that you have while navigating the fact that at any given minute in a high growth company, something good, something bad, right? You're
Right.
on that cliff, you're on that journey. So I don't mean to say that you are that 100% of the time.
Right.
It's more like an outlook that I should be doing the work that is going to be in the roller coaster, but I should be doing the work on my mental health, my emotional health, my physical health, and my spiritual health to show up the best I can.
Right.
Right? So
you have to do the work.
you have to do the work. There's no skipping the work.
Right. There's very few people that naturally just are grounded.
Correct.
There's
You
just
have
very
to
few
do the
people
work.
that are grounded. And I think some people get a little confused, like what is the work, or what do you mean by the work? But I've had a ton of coaches in a lot of different elements of my world, from grappling to guitar to being a founder myself, to all these different areas. And I totally believe in coaches. And what I've seen in being a coach to sports and teams is, like, my job is to help unlock these blockers for them so they can continue to grow. Because a lot of us create stories in our own head about who we are and what we are and what we can do and what we can't do. And it's to unlock those, frees those people to go farther than they can. And I think as a coach, how I define coach is helping someone go farther than they can alone.
Yeah, I think that's a good definition. What I think is interesting is talking about the drama triangle. It's really just a framework for the stories, right?
Oh, interesting.
So the story you're telling yourself is that you're a victim and you don't have power, and that your colleague is a villain because he didn't invite you to a meeting, and then you got rescued because you complained to your CEO and your CEO went to jump in to fix it. That entire thing is a story, right? So that's just a framework for thinking about the stories you're telling yourself. I agree with what you're saying, and I think in many ways we help people unblock and unlearn, and then we also help people learn. But at the end of the day, I will say the following, which is taking it into maybe a little bit of a different context. But one of the things I find with particularly first-time founders is they really want to do what I consider like horizontal coaching. It's like tactical, it's practical, it's operational, it's like the what. Okay, that's great. And a lot of people will find coaches that will just do that with them. I really try to say, listen, I can help you on all of that, right? I've been in this world for 25 years. I've been on the founding teams, I've been a VC, I've been coaching for longer than the average startup coach these days. I can do all those things, but those are Band-Aids, right? They may help you a bit, right? I want to challenge you to go vertical, right? I want you to go inside, I want you to go deep. This is the inner work we're talking about. This is the who work. This is the, here's how I'm showing up in the moment, but also overall, right? And then where's my leadership edge? And what are the things that we need to, again, unlearn or learn, right? I'm here to help you potentially have some game-changing observations and explore new possibilities on how you might show up differently next time, which would require you to build a habit, because you've got 30 to 40 years of grooves of working one way, and then we're going to discover something and you're going to want to change it. But that means that each time you have to be present and aware and choose the new path. And then I'm there to help you do that in an accountable way. I think there's nothing more rewarding. And really what I look for now in year 8 is somebody who really wants to do the lion's share of the vertical work, right? We can go explore some of the horizontal, right? Another way to look at it is there's the content and there's the context. I don't want to just talk to you about the problem and help you solve a problem because you're going to have another problem tomorrow.
Right.
What I want to talk to you about is your relationship with the problem. How are you showing up around the problem, right? So a lot of that right there could actually be pulling out the dreaded drama triangle and being like, right now, your relationship to this problem is in victim. How are we going to shift that?
Right.
What's something more empowering? Where is that coming from?
Right. It's kind of like going to the why.
Yeah.
You know, why is this happening? I was driving my daughter to school today, and I've grappled my whole life in jiu-jitsu and wrestling, and somehow I always get pulled into my kids' sports and I end up coaching. Never wanted to coach a high school sport. I wanted my kids to have their own. But I've been coaching high school wrestling, and my daughter wants to wrestle this year.
Yay!
And so she's doing flag football now. She started asking about some wrestling techniques, and I was like, explaining, well, this is what you do. And we have a new coach, and I said, I like how he's coaching now because he's teaching the what and the how and the when, but he also teaches the why, and that's how I coach. Is like, it's so important to define why we do what we do, because that you can carry with you in any situation. Typically, people like, you learn how to do this thing at a certain time. You're like, okay, got it. I'll just do that thing. But if you don't understand why you're doing that at that time, then you get into a different situation that you don't understand. That's not the same situation. Understanding that why of what I've done with like these other things can help kind of give you the path to figure it out. And I see that in sports. I see that with the teams that I work with. And I try to be very purposeful when I try to teach something about why we're doing this. One, they won't buy into it unless they understand the why. And then two, they can carry that why with them to help them. In what you do, I think that makes so much sense, working with that person and understanding why they're reacting the way they are.
Right. I call the who and the why, and then the what and the how. That's how I view coaching, but that's also leadership and management, right? Which is, you want to give people the project, you want to give them the vision, you want to give them the why it's important. But if you're down in the weeds of what they're supposed to be doing and how they're supposed to be doing it, then you're micromanaging and you're not, bringing the best out of.
Are you familiar with people talking about founder mode?
Yes.
Recently? What's your take on founder mode?
It's so funny. It was such a sort of big moment, and I didn't think there was anything to it. Like, of course, there's a time in a company where you're still more like a product in chief, right? And you're in the weeds and you're managing week to week. And then there's a moment, usually if you get closer to product market fit or you have product market fit, that is, you are now no longer product in chief, you are company chief, and you sort of move up a little bit, and this is sort of the natural occurrence of the business, and then you hire people, and then you manage to further out, and at some point you actually go higher than that in a really big company, and you're sort of just like strategy chief, like if you ask any of Bill Gates to Steve Jobs to whomever, where you're really just a lot of your calendar is empty and you're walking around and seeing what people are up to and getting the 360. So that's the nature of business building at different phases. The interesting part is not all people can move from founder mode to sort of company chief CEO mode, right? It's very rare. They're different skills. I believe it's even rarer if you don't have a coach, right? I mean, part of the value is to say, okay, here's how you're showing up in this phase, and getting really clear. And oftentimes, if we have a good relationship and I was brought in by an investor, we'll have that conversation. Like, here's the things that you would need to up level for this next phase of the business, and we're very clear on what we're working on. So I just thought it was like a whole hullabaloo about something that I thought we've all kind of known. I wasn't sure.
Well, I think it's interesting because founder is not a role. Being a founder is not a role in the company. Founders are important to the company, obviously at many stages, or maybe even all stages, but the role of founder is that there's not a role. Now, CEO's a role, the head of product's a role, a sales rep's a role. So it's okay if you're a founder and you're a CEO, or if you're a founder, even if you're a founder in your role as a sales rep right now. But I think where people get lost is some people believe that they can be a founder without a role. And what happens is those people kind of walk around the organization and create messes.
Yes.
Is what I find.
Yeah.
I've had a few dozen teams that I've worked with where we have co-founders and one ends up being the CEO founder. Many times they both want to be the CEO and then they be co-CEOs, or we have a CEO and a president. But
can we do another car ride about co-CEOs?
Yeah, and so at the end of the day, it's like, what is your role and what are your responsibilities?
Exactly.
So that's like one of the things that we do every year with leadership teams is define roles and responsibilities, walk through them, verbalize and talk about like, where are the gray areas, where are overlapping, where we had issues. But we need to define what our roles and responsibilities are, and the role of the founder is that's just not a role.
Yeah.
And so it's important when you're looking at the organization and when the team develops like their vision. I like to use a 3-year vision. We need to know where we're going. Who's going to get on this bus if we don't know where we're going, including investors and customers and employees and the leadership team themselves. And so once we do that, now we can talent map, like, do we have the right people in the right roles to get us to where we're going? And sometimes you'll find one of the founders just doesn't have a role that fits right. And
I have like 3 companies right now, Jeff.
Okay.
Right? The founder's a CEO, and then a co-founder, from the earliest days, is in a named something, but isn't really a leader, isn't really a manager, and isn't really like responsible for anything, but it has the title and is still there.
Right.
And it causes an entire mess for the org that's supposedly under him, and then a lot of frustration for the person that's actually managing and leading the team underneath that person.
Yes.
Right? And like, all of those people need Jeff Martin.
You just explained I've probably done 40 companies where I helped fix that problem. And at the end of the day, we all need a role.
Yep.
If we're in the company, if we're building the company, we need a role in the company. We could actually take a role as advisor, or we could take a role as board member, or we could take a role for just an investor at this point. We started the company, we have equity in the company, but we don't have a specific role. But it's so important as teams define their roles and responsibilities, because then they can define what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, right? So.
Yeah, well, those companies that I work with are mostly trapped in the drama triangle.
Yeah.
Because there's so much drama that comes up from having a person that doesn't really have roles that are clearly defined and isn't really the person that's running the department, right?
Yeah.
So that's like a real drama triangle trap.
Yeah. One of the tools that I teach teams is called triage, and you can triage anything, and you can put triage on the triage item on the triage list at any time of the day, and it's always something you look at every single week, this triage list. And what triage is a place to actually talk about issues or problems, and we have a methodology called ACT. You assess the situation, we come up with solutions or consider solutions, and then we take action. And what a lot of teams do is they just talk about something over and over again, and they never solve it. So that drama triangle is just going around and around in circles. But this methodology of having a place to put issues that we need to talk about, and it's not a parking lot, because parking lots sit there.
Yeah.
These things, we look at them every week, and hopefully knock 5 or 6 off every single week on the weekly meeting. But just having a process that the team understands of, we're going to talk about the issue, we're going to ask some questions, we're going to clarify it, we're going to consider solutions, and then solve it so we take it off once and for all, is really empowering. And it's kind of silly because it's a very simple process, but sometimes people just need a simple process to follow.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, I think, one of your zone of genius or superpower, if whatever word you want to choose, is really, creating these. They're simple, but they're not easy. Right? There is not necessarily, nobody's necessarily doing them freely. Like, they're obvious, but we're not doing it. Like, there's just so much going on at a startup and a high growth company that simple frameworks and processes are very valuable. And sometimes you need that, but then you also need the outside person to help with facilitation and accountability, right? So you and I kind of do different, similar but different, right? We're both there to help leaders be effective and efficient and successful. And I think a piece of it is the tools and the frameworks, but a piece of it is just like not being a person that's on the team.
Yes, it's so helpful. I even have people facilitate my sessions with my team.
Right, yeah.
All right, so I have one last question for you. Now, I was actually thinking you had all people this question. It's funny. This is either going to be the hardest question of your life or the easiest question for you. And I always set this up saying, okay, I'm glad you're sitting down. It's going to be one of the most difficult questions you've ever heard. But for you, I think it's definitely going to go one direction or the other direction on this one. So here's the scenario. You are trapped on a desert island the rest of your life. Now, luckily, it's a beautiful tropical island.
Okay.
And you have all the food that you need, water, you have everything that you need, shelter, but the one thing that you don't have is entertainment. However, an old 80s boombox drifted ashore with endless batteries, but you can only bring one cassette tape with you to listen to the rest of your life. Now, this can be an album of any era, so it doesn't have to be only on cassette. But you can only listen to one
so it's not
album.
Just in 80s, because I was going
80s.
Right to 80s.
Yep.
Which is still valid, because I love
Still
the
valid,
80s.
yep, all right.
Oh, goodness.
My guess is you like the 90s more.
I do like the 90s. Oh, man, one?
The rest of your life.
Bob Marley. I was going to go with Pearl Jam, but like the rest of my life on an island in the sun, I want to be listening to Three Little Birds and One Love and like Bop It Up, right? So Bob Marley. But Bob Marley is, that's my son's favorite. That's like what we dance to in the morning. So
That's awesome.
But I would like for the record, I would like to say that I was going to choose Madonna.
Oh.
Because I thought we were going 80s. I have to. That's my generation. Madonna or Prince would have been my selections if she did this. You gave me one. I'm just going to keep going and make all of my musical tastes
Maybe
known.
Jeff will let me have two.
Right? If we went 90s, it would have been Pearl Jam. Grateful Dead. But you can't pick one album. That would have to be...
Yeah, like a certain concert.
Right, it would have to be like a bootleg.
Yeah. I was actually at the last Grateful Dead concert.
Here.
With Jerry.
Oh.
Soldier Field in Chicago.
Stop.
Yeah. I saw the last
my goodness.
last show.
That's amazing. I saw Jerry. I probably say my favorite Jerry show was a Vegas show because we had friends from a bunch of different places come, and we all picnicked and camped. And it was just like, we have these pictures with the blue sky, and it's like hot summer where like they had the water coming down, right? And it was like probably in that last tour.
Okay.
That would be the time frame. Yeah. I will say that I did go to the Sphere, and I did go to the last building company here in LA.
Was John Mayer there?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
I know.
good.
He's so good. He really
so
like,
good.
there's only, can't figure out who else would have been able to do that and fit in.
As a guitar player,
He's unbelievable.
incredible. I didn't like him in his early days, and then
Most people I don't
grew to
think
like him
did, but as
more.
a guitar player, I think
he's a great guy
musician.
and everything.
Yeah.
Everything. But yeah, he is an incredible guitar player, and like you said, I don't think he actually makes the Dead sound so good because they actually can harmonize correctly now. And the guitar work is amazing.
The harmonizing's harder. I mean, this is the thing about the Sphere. The Sphere is amazing, and you get all of the Dead kind of graphics, but what it does do when they pan to them playing, Bobby, like that big, he's just, they're so old, right? Mickey, like, it's a little scary, right? Like Bob, he's like over here, and they're like, is he alive? Because they don't move as much, and then they go back and forth from John, who makes all of those, and you're like, are the rest of them moving? So there is like that element of it, but somebody told me that they may come back next summer, and I would absolutely go again.
Oh, yeah.
I would go anywhere.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, well, thanks for joining me on the show.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.